All right, let's go down to Capitol Hill, where presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders is unveiling his plan to deal with the student debt loan crisis. Reportedly, he will propose eliminating $1.6 trillion of student debt in the U.S.
That keep our society going. In other words, we will make a full and complete education a human right in America to which all of our people are entitled. This means making public colleges, universities, and HBCUs tuition-free and debt-free by tripling the work-study program, expanding Pell Grants, and other financial incentives. Today, we are entering a proposal which will allow every person in this country to get all of the education that they need to live out their dreams because they are Americans. Further, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, it is simply not acceptable that our younger generation, through no fault of their own, will have a lower standard of living than their parents, more debt, lower wages, and less likelihood of owning their own homes. That is why this proposal completely eliminates student debt in this country and ends the absurdity of sentencing an entire generation, the millennial generation, to a lifetime of debt for the crime of doing the right thing, and that is going out and getting a higher education. 10 years ago, the United States government bailed out Wall Street after their greed, their recklessness, and their illegal behavior drove us into the worst recession in modern history. Today, the major Wall Street banks are larger than ever, their profits are soaring, and their CEOs receive huge compensation packages. Our proposal, which costs $2.2 trillion over 10 years, will be fully paid for by a tax on Wall Street speculation, similar to what exists in dozens of countries around the world. The American people bailed out Wall Street. Now it is time for Wall Street to come to the aid of the middle class of this country. This Wall Street tax will have the added benefit of controlling Wall Street recklessness and reducing the likelihood of another major economic crash. In 1944, as World War II was coming to an end, the U.S. government did the right thing and passed the GI Bill, which made higher education free to all of those who served in the armed forces. That act not only improved the financial well-being of millions of men and women, but it also laid the groundwork for a great expansion of the American middle class. In the 1960s and 1970s, the federal government and state governments invested heavily in higher education, with the result that college tuition was virtually free for millions of young people. 40 years ago, a federal Pell Grant paid for nearly 80% of tuition, fees, room and board at a four-year college. Well, unfortunately, things have changed over the years and changed in a bad way. Today, it will cost over $21,000 each and every year to attend some of these very same schools, which 50 years ago were virtually free. Today, Pell Grants cover only 30% of college expenses. And here are the results of federal and state higher education cutbacks. Today, the average college senior graduates with about $30,000 in student debt, and 1 out of 6 seniors will graduate with over $50,000 in debt. The situation is even worse for African American and Latino families. And at a time when we desperately need more doctors and dentists and nurses, those who are graduating medical school and dental school and nursing school are finding themselves in some cases with $300,000 or $400,000 in debt. And here is a sad truth, another sad truth regarding this whole crisis. Many students are dropping out of college, not getting their degrees, and yet they still find themselves with tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Let's be clear. The millennial generation was told that the only way they would get the good jobs available is if they received a college education. Unfortunately, that turned out to be bad advice. It was wrong. Since 2000, the cost of attending a public college has nearly doubled. Meanwhile, the bottom 60% of college graduates earn less money than those who graduated college did 19 years ago, and wages for the average college graduate have stagnated. Today, 34% of Americans 25 and older have a college degree, but only 26% of them in our country, 26% of those jobs require a college education. The result is that many millions of young people today are forced to work at low-wage jobs. Their standard of living is going down while they're struggling to pay off their outrageously high level of student debt. Bottom line is we should not be punishing people for getting a higher education. It is time to hit the reset button. Under the proposal that we introduced today, all student debt would be canceled in 6 months. By taking this action, we not only provide immediate financial relief to 45 million Americans who have $1.6 trillion in debt, but we will be improving the entire economy. According to a recent study, canceling all student debt would add an estimated $1 trillion to our economy over the next decade and create up to 1.5 million jobs. Let me just conclude by giving you a tale of two crises. 10 years ago, because of their greed and illegal behavior, Wall Street banks were on the verge of collapse, and the United States Congress, with taxpayer assistance, came to their aid. Well, now we got millions and millions of families in this country who are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt. And maybe instead of just worrying about Wall Street, we start worrying about those families and that generation and give them a break.
That's right.
So this is for those families, this is for those young people, this is for the economy, and this is for justice. And that is what we are proposing. Thank you all very much.